Hello and welcome to my channel. I hope you enjoy this story. I'm going to try and upload a new story each day. The Holly's Enchanted Easel. Holly Arnold stood in the middle of her studio, surrounded by the remnants of her latest creative frenzy. Canvases leaned against the walls, smeared with half-finished images and splashes of color. She sighed, running a hand through her unruly hair. Her latest series had been met with critical acclaim, but lately she felt as though something was missing. The Isle of Wight had always inspired her with its rugged coastline and haunting beauty, but now the inspiration had waned, leaving her in a creative drought. Determined to break through her block, Holly decided to visit a local antique shop she had never noticed before. The store was a labyrinth of forgotten relics and curiosities, each piece whispering stories from a time long past. As she wandered through the dimly lit aisles, her eyes were drawn to an old easel tucked away in a corner. It was ornate, carved with intricate designs that seemed to shift and writhe in the flickering candlelight. "Ah, as you've found something special," a voice croaked behind her. Holly turned to see the shopkeeper, an elderly woman with eyes that glinted with an unnerving intensity. "This easel," Holly began, reaching out to touch the wood. It felt warm beneath her fingers, almost alive. "How much is it?" The shopkeeper smiled a toothless grin. "That easel has a history, my dear. It once belonged to a famous painter who disappeared under mysterious circumstances. They say it has a magic of its own, bringing the artist's visions to life." Holly's heart quickened at the thought. She needed something to reignite her passion, and this could be it. Without another word, she paid the woman and carried the easel back to her studio. That night Holly set up the easel and began to paint. She lost herself in the process, each brushstroke guided by an unseen hand. Hours passed in a blur, and when she finally stepped back, she gasped. Before her stood a stunning landscape of the Isle of Wight, more vivid and lifelike than anything she had ever painted. As she admired her work, the painting began to shimmer. Holly blinked, thinking her tired eyes were playing tricks on her. But the shimmer grew more intense, and the scene within the frame started to move. Waves crashed against the shore, trees swayed in the wind, and the sun dipped below the horizon. Holly was mesmerized. She reached out to touch the canvas, and as her fingers brushed the surface, a chill ran through her. The scene froze for a moment before a dark shadow flickered at the edge of the painting. Holly pulled her hand back, her heart pounding. The next morning, Holly awoke to find the painting still moving, the shadow now more pronounced. Determined to understand what was happening, she painted again, this time a portrait of a young woman she had seen in a dream. As before, the image came to life, but this time the woman's eyes seemed to follow Holly around the room, her expression shifting from serene to sinister. Days turned into weeks, and Holly's studio filled with living paintings. At first, it was exhilarating, but soon she began to notice a darkness creeping into her work. The landscapes grew twisted and ominous, and the figures within the portraits appeared tormented and vengeful. The shadow that had first appeared in her initial painting grew, slithering from canvas to canvas, infecting each creation with a malevolent presence. Holly tried to stop painting, but the easel called to her, its whispers invading her dreams, urging her to create more. She became a prisoner to its allure, unable to resist the compulsion to paint. Her friends and family grew concerned as she isolated herself, her once bright and cheerful demeanor replaced by a haunted, hollow look. One stormy night, unable to sleep, Holly found herself standing before the easel once more. She picked up her brush, her hand moving as if possessed. This time she painted a self-portrait, her face distorted by fear and anguish. As she added the final stroke, the shadow in the painting lunged forward, its tendrils wrapping around her image. The room grew cold and the lights flickered. Holly watched in horror as the shadow reached out from the canvas, encircling her. She tried to scream, but no sound came. The darkness engulfed her, pulling her into the painting. Her world went black. When Holly awoke, she found herself trapped within the canvas. She banged against the invisible barrier, but no one could hear her cries. Outside, her studio remained eerily silent. The living paintings stood as silent witnesses to her fate, their eyes following her every move. In the days that followed, the studio became a place of legend. Visitors who entered reported feeling an overwhelming sense of dread, and many claimed to see a ghostly figure trapped within one of the paintings. The shopkeeper from the antique store disappeared, leaving behind only a cryptic note: "The easel chooses its master, and its power demands a price." Years passed, and Holly's story faded into myth. But on stormy nights, when the wind howled and the sea roared, some claimed they could hear her voice, calling out from the paintings, begging for release. The easel remained, waiting for its next victim, its dark desires ever hungry. And so, the legend of Holly's enchanted easel lived on, a cautionary tale of the price of ambition and the perils of tampering with forces beyond our understanding. For those who dared to listen, the warning was clear: some creations are best left unfinished, and some powers are too dangerous to wield. Years later, the legend of Holly Arnold and her enchanted easel had become a chilling local myth, a ghost story whispered among the residents of the Isle of Wight. Tourists and curious thrill-seekers often sought out Holly's abandoned studio, now a decaying structure cloaked in ivy and shadow. They peered through the cracked windows, hoping to catch a glimpse of the haunted paintings rumored to still reside within. One autumn evening, a young art student named Emily Fletcher arrived on the island. Emily had heard the tale of Holly Arnold from a professor who spoke of the legend with a mix of reverence and caution. Intrigued by this story and desperate for a breakthrough in her own art, Emily decided to investigate. Emily found Holly's studio nestled at the edge of a dense forest, its dilapidated exterior barely visible through the overgrown foliage. She took a deep breath and pushed open the creaking door. The air inside was thick with dust and the lingering scent of paint. Canvases, covered in sheets, were scattered around the room, and the once vibrant colors had faded to muted tones. As Emily explored, she felt an unsettling presence, as if she were being watched. She approached the center of the room, where the enchanted easel still stood, draped in a tattered cloth. Hesitant but curious, she pulled the cloth away, revealing the easel's intricate carvings. A shiver ran down her spine as she felt a surge of energy emanate from the ancient wood. Despite her apprehension, Emily set up her own canvas and began to paint. She worked feverishly, losing track of time as the easel seemed to guide her hand. As she painted, a vivid landscape of the Isle of Wight took shape, more lifelike than anything she had ever created. When she finally stepped back, exhausted, the painting shimmered just as Holly's had. Emily watched in awe as the scene came to life, the waves crashing and the trees swaying in a gentle breeze. But then a shadow appeared at the edge of the painting, slowly creeping towards the center. Emily's heart pounded as she realized the danger she was in. She remembered the stories of Holly's fate and tried to step away from the easel, but her feet seemed rooted to the spot. The shadow within the painting grew, its tendrils reaching out, curling around the edges of the canvas. "No," Emily whispered, her voice trembling. "I won't let it take me." Summoning all her strength, she tore her gaze from the painting and stumbled back. The easel's power surged, pulling at her, but she resisted, fighting against the invisible force. She reached for the nearest canvas, a half-finished portrait covered in dust, and hurled it at the easel. The impact broke the spell, and the room fell silent. Emily collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath. The paintings around her remained still, their lifelike movements frozen. She knew she had to leave the studio and the cursed easel behind before it claimed her as it had claimed Holly. Gathering her supplies, Emily fled the studio, vowing never to return. As she emerged into the cool night air, she glanced back one last time. The studio stood silent and foreboding, a dark silhouette against the moonlit sky. She could almost hear Holly's voice, a faint whisper carried on the wind, urging her to escape while she still could. Emily returned to her studies, her art now infused with a newfound passion and intensity. She never spoke of the enchanted easel, but the experience had left an indelible mark on her soul. She often wondered about Holly, trapped within her own creations, and hoped that one day someone might find a way to set her free. The legend of Holly Arnold and her enchanted easel continued to haunt the Isle of Wight, a reminder of the perilous allure of forbidden power. And as the years passed, the studio remained untouched, a silent sentinel guarding its dark secret, waiting for the next artist brave or foolish enough to heed its call. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please don't forget to like, and even better, like and subscribe. Thank you very much, and I hope you have had a great day.